Hi everyone, it's Dr. Amy Abelar with Acupuncture Practice Systems. In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of the most important numbers every acupuncturist should understand, and that is your break-even point. This is one of those topics that is not particularly exciting, but it can completely change the way that you think about your business. A lot of acupuncturists will open a practice and start focusing on things like getting in more patients, marketing, networking, increasing their revenue, which are all great things to do, but most of them don't actually know how many treatments they need to do in order to survive each month. Understanding this number will help you to make smarter business decisions, and it removes a lot of the guesswork and anxiety around money. So, what is your break-even point? Your break-even point is the point where your business generates enough money to cover all of its expenses. At break-even, your rent is paid, utilities are paid, software is paid, all the expenses are paid for, but you haven't actually made any profit yet. So again, at this point, expenses are covered, the business is surviving, but you're not taking home a salary. So step one of figuring this out is going to be to calculate your monthly business expenses. You want to make a list of everything that you can think of. This could include things like rent, utilities, malpractice insurance, scheduling software, your phone, your internet, any needles or other supplies. If you pay a laundry service or a bookkeeper, any marketing you're doing, any payroll if you have employees, continuing education, credit card processing fees, loan payments if you have student loans, literally everything. You want to add all of those up together, and let's say, as an example that we're going to work with here, let's say that your expenses total $6,000 a month. That's your overhead. That's what it costs to just pay for all of the expenses of you having this business. The second step is going to be to determine your average revenue per treatment. So let's look at what that might be. Let's say you charge $110 per treatment and you want to be conservative with this number. So let's say you use the number $100 per treatment when you're doing this calculation. You don't need to decrease this number by too much because you ideally already calculated all of your expenses when you that you need to cover when you did your expense summary. But just in case you missed something, because that's realistic that we might miss something in there, let's say you're making $100 per treatment instead of 110, or adjust it a little bit by whatever your treatment cost is. The third step is going to be to calculate the break-even point using those two numbers. So you take your monthly expenses and you're going to divide that by your average revenue per treatment. So in our example that we made, we have $6,000 a month in expenses, and we're going to divide that by $100 a treatment. That equals out to be 60 treatments per month. If you do 60 treatments per month, that means you're averaging roughly 15 treatments per week, or about 3 patients per day over a 5-day work week, just to keep the business alive. So the mistake, though, that a lot of acupuncturists make is they stop here. They think, oh, cool, I only need 60 treatments per month. But that's not exactly accurate, because this is only covering your business expenses. You still haven't paid yourself at all. And unfortunately, your mortgage company, your grocery store, your utility company, and your car payment doesn't really care that your business broke even. They need extra funds that are going to pay your personal bills. So your true break-even point is going to include your personal expenses. So if you want to find your true break-even point, you should also be factoring in your personal financial needs. And I'm actually going to recommend that you run 2 different calculations. The first calculation is going to be, what is the bare minimum survival number? So this is going to be the number you need in order to keep your household functioning. So you've paid your business expenses, but also in order to have just your bare minimum number, that's going to include covering the rent for the place that you live in, your utilities for the place that you live in, your groceries, your car payment, any gas, any insurance, cell phones, if you have any personal debt. So let's just say that those also total $6,000 a month. When you add that to your business expenses, we had $6,000 from business, now you have $6,000 from personal, you need $12,000 a month. And you want to divide that by that $100 of average revenue per treatment. So now it's closer to 120 treatments per month, which is 30 treatments a week, not 15, and about 6 patients per day instead of 3 over a 5-day work week. So that's going to be just to cover your essentials. So if you want to look at, okay, can I realistically do 60 treatments per month or 120 treatments per month? That's how you're going to figure out how to just barely get by paying for both your business and your personal expenses. But I also want you to run a calculation that's for your ideal lifestyle number. So a lot of acupuncturists are going to forget to do this step because reality is you don't want to just survive, right? That's not the goal. You want your business to be able to also support contributing to your retirement account, building an emergency savings fund, any vacations you might want to take. Maybe there's a continuing ed class that feels a little extravagant. It's some specialty thing that you want to do, not just the minimum requirements. Maybe you want to save for that. You might have home maintenance expenses that you need to save for, or maybe you want to invest or have a little extra spending money. This is going to be really important for future business growth and your long-term financial security. So let's say, as an example, maybe your ideal monthly financial goals look a little bit more like you're adding to that $6,000 of living expenses, you're adding $1,000 a month to retirement contributions, or $500 a month into savings, or $500 to a vacation fund or discretionary spending. So now let's say your personal income, if you do all of these things as just like ideal, right? Ideal situation. Now your personal income needs to be $8,500 a month, not $6,000. So let's take $8,500 a month of personal income for your ideal situation. Add that to the $6,000 of business expenses. Now you need $14,500 a month at $100 a treatment. So that's going to be 145 treatments per month, which is going to be 36 treatments per week, or 7 to 8 patients per day over a 5-day work week. So now you're looking at what it might take, not just to survive, not just to cover your business expenses and even your personal expenses, but to actually be building a financially healthy life where you're paying down your student loans, you're investing in your future for your retirement, and you have some spending money and some miscellaneous savings. So why does all of this matter? When you understand these numbers, you can start asking a lot better questions like, are my prices even sustainable? Is my office too expensive? How many patients do I realistically need? Is that going to completely burn me out? Or does that seem like a reasonable amount of patients for my body to physically be treating every week? Would raising my prices help? Should I add another service? Does hiring another staff member make financial sense if I need to be bringing in these additional treatments, and maybe that's not something that I can physically handle on my own? Maybe I need to hire a staff member. You also want to look at, am I building a business that supports my goals? Instead of guessing, you are making decisions now based on real numbers. So many acupuncturists discover they don't necessarily have a patient problem. They have a pricing problem, or they have an overhead problem, or they have a retention problem, or maybe it's a systems problem. So yes, you need more patients, but you might also just need better numbers. Maybe this is showing you that it's not realistic with what your pricing is at, or it's not realistic to be in this very expensive space that you're renting, right? So these numbers are also going to change as your practice grows, because your expenses will change. Your pricing is going to change, your patient volume is going to change, your personal goals are going to change. Let's say you're renting right now, but you want to save to buy a home. So this is not going to be a one-time exercise. This is something that you could do, and it's absolutely worth reviewing this regularly. One of the most empowering things, honestly, that you can do as a business owner is to understand your numbers. Your break-even point turns vague financial stress into something that's actually measurable. It helps you understand, what does my business need to do in order for it to survive, and what does my life need in order to be supported? I encourage you to calculate, as I said before, both your minimum survival numbers and your ideal lifestyle numbers. And ideally, you fall somewhere in between those two. I mean, we'd love to just make every amount of money we can possibly make in order to get us to that ideal. But if you don't have that ideal, at least you will hopefully be following between your bare minimum and your ideal. So your goal for your business is to build a practice that supports the life that you want to live. And the more clearly that you can understand your numbers, the more confidently you can make those decisions that will grow your practice. If you are not already an Acupuncture Practice Systems member and you're enjoying this type of content, you will find so much more in-depth trainings, templates, documents, workflows, and business resources inside the membership. Whether you are a student or a solo practitioner or you're growing a larger clinic, we have created resources to help shorten that learning curve, and you can click the link below to learn more about acupuncture practice systems.